Driving, proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the furious fleet and for yours with 10% off using code FD10. Bidding Classics, the online classic car marketplace with more cars added every week. And Lancaster Insurance cover the furious fleet. They are one of the biggest specialist insurers in the UK, covering all areas of vintage to modern classic cars and motorbikes. Follow the links in the description below. Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today we're looking at one of the world's most innovative cars ever built, and in this form the world's first hatchback, and it came out in the 1930s. It couldn't be anything but a Citroen, and this is a Traction Avant Commerciale. Now a quick word from our sponsors while you hit like and subscribe, then on with the video. Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today we are looking at one of the most iconic, significant, recognisable and it turns out technologically advanced cars of the 20th century. Yes, this is the Citroen Traction Avant. That literally means front wheel drive, because this is one of the cleverest cars you're ever going to see, and it's even cleverer than you might think in this particular guise, and I'll show you why. Now when this thing came out in 1934, it really just blew people's minds, because everyone was used to heavy rear-wheel drive, body-on-frame cars, and this threw all of that out of the window, because it is front-wheel drive, as the name suggests. It is not body-on-frame, it is a monocoque. Everything ahead of here is a suspended engine. It used very clever engine mounts. It was called floating power. It was a very nice, soft rubber mount thing, which actually licensed from Chrysler, which meant the engine vibrations were reduced in a way that contemporary cars didn't enjoy. It had hydraulic brakes all round. It had torsion bar independent suspension. It was incredibly clever. It was also incredibly strong and safe in a way that cars of the time weren't. And throughout the 30s, they increased the size of it. They made it 5.5 inches longer and 8 inches wider, meaning it could carry more people more comfortably. But they did other clever things as well. Come around the back and have a look. Now, in the 1930s, most of this car's rivals would have had something like a separate trunk outside the car, or you've a space in the car you reached over from behind the seats. The Traction Avant, though, took things a stage further, because it had a flap-down boot, so you could reach through from outside to inside without being inside the car yourself, which was a huge advance. However, things got even cleverer with the Commerciale. This is where the Commerciale became such an incredible and exciting and different thing. The world had seen nothing like this before, apart from maybe an actual commercial vehicle, certainly not on a car, because instead of, well, having nothing at all, or the previous bash your shins off bottom opening thing, turn this handle now and the entire back of the car opens. This is madness, it's witchcraft. Whose idea was this? I've got to say, it does weigh an absolute ton. It's not like your self-opening super duper clever things like you have on modern cars, wave your foot under the bumper and it does it magically. This is something that requires a little bit of effort, but wow, this is so handy. It's so tall, you can stand underneath here if it's raining, you can properly shelter under here, and this interesting bustle back shape means you've got a great big space down here as well, where you can stow additional stuff. In fact, the spare wheel would normally stand vertically in here. It does make it quite hard to get things in and out, but it means you've got lots more space in here. And we have, for your convenience of viewing, removed the back seat, because this is absolutely enormous. It's like a limousine or a bus. The literage capacity in here, it goes into quadruple figures. It's immense. The rear seat, base and back, do lift out. They don't fold out, they literally lift out. They're quite weighty, it has to be said. But once they're out, you've basically got yourself a transit van. Now, unlike the front doors, which are suicide, these are regular doors. They open right the way forward, so you can walk all the way in with big bits of luggage. There was even a third row of seats, which, unlike modern SUVs, MPVs, Range Rovers and what have you, where they magically fold out the floor, you did have to do a bit of effort and slot the things in. But this thing became an actual, honest-to-goodness, 9-seater car. It's not quite as commodious as a modern Chevy Suburban, but the space in here is pretty decent, with quite nice headroom as well. Unfortunately, there are no cup holders or places to charge your phone, so I'll mark it down for that. Right, climbing aboard the car, you'll notice the door handle is on the wrong end. This is because, although it is standard opening rear doors, and they are very long doors as well on this later model, the front doors are rear hinge suicide doors. They flap right back to allow you to get in this way. So always remember, if the door isn't quite latched shut when you're driving, don't try and open it and close it on the move. It's going to end badly. Now, you do have quite a step down, because this is the monocoque chassis, the monocoque shell. It gets all its strength from these beams around the door frame above and below. So this step is very large indeed. Climb aboard and clunk it shut. Now, being a car, well, this is a car of the 50s, but little has changed from the 30s. We've got a lovely vinyl textured door card with very pretty little door furniture. Just a window winder and a door handle, not much else in here. In typical 1930s, 40s, 50s style, we're a little bit hunched over the wheel, which is very much in our face. Big wheel, although this is actually a smaller wheel from a later non-Traction Avant model, so that there's a bit more clearance between the door and the wheel that the owner has fitted. Quite a clever move. In front of us we have got the smallest little information panel you can think of, with a beautiful late deco style font on the speedometer reading up to 150, this is kilometers an hour. This car was actually bought from France by accident on holiday one time, so this is a purely very French car. On the left we've got the essence, the fuel gauge, up to 50 litres, that's quite a big fuel tank. The battery level, charging or depleting, and in the bottom we've got the mileometer showing the car's done 97,500 miles over its life. And in the centre we've got the needle, a lovely little pyramid, an elongated pyramid which I think will glow in the dark. And it's actually attached to a clear disc which rotates. Very clever and inventive. This is actually 97,500 kilometres, and we think the owner tells us it's been around the clock at least once. So it's done a fair few miles over the years. Up top we've got our interesting T-shelf area. Not a lot of space for pastis and aperitif up there, but it's a very clean and efficient looking bit of design with nice light colours, a two-tone split on the dashboard colour, makes that whole thing feel nice and light and airy. Up on top of that we've got our rear view mirror, which is mounted on the dashboard rather than up above, which is fairly common for the time, but that is actually mounted on a big wheel, which lets us open up the air conditioning. Switch on the air conditioning just here, the climate, bit of ventilation through the windscreen. A similar deal down the bottom as well, this little thumb screw here at the bottom of the dashboard allows you to open up a small flap on the scuttle to get a bit of air through to your feet, so plenty of ventilation, making the car very comfortable to be in. Now we have this curiously unlabelled cryptic area of buttons, quite a nice layout of nice symmetry, very French indeed the way they do that. First of all, on the top left we've got advance and retard, which is not a common feature in a 50s car but does make starting in the cold a little easier. On the right hand side, one of my favourite features I think I've seen in a car in a very long time. These are clockwork indicators, so you wind them around and that gives you your delay function. This is your 3 flashes as you change lanes like in a modern car, but as it winds down, having pushed it around, it flashes until it's finished, which is just delightful. And the little red light shows it's actually flashing. Underneath that we have D for starter, which starts the car obviously. Below that we have S for choke, all fairly normal. In the middle though we have something quite unusual. We've got a manual flipper for the wipers. So you want to flick wipe, you just flick that around, which is curious. We do though have electric wipers as well, e.g. for essuie-glace, which means cleaning the glass effectively. And finally in the bottom, the interior lamp, which is a delightful greeny blue glow here in the back. Now finally, this particular car does have one very nice upgrade indeed. It has a 4-speed gearbox. The shifter mounted in the same place as on the original 3-speed, but the original 3-speed is a fragile, delicate item. It's a delicate flower that you don't really want to upset. This though is a 4-speed from a DS. It's far more usable, far more tough, gives you an extra ratio and makes the car just an awful lot more drivable. But it is effectively an H pattern like on a column shift, but mounted straight onto the dashboard. So we have first, second, third and fourth and reverse over there. So yeah, a nice upgrade to a very nice car. Behind the steering wheel we have got our light switch which rotates and flips forward. And finally over to the left we have the horn, which is an impressive thing in its own right. It's like a small tugboat coming into dock. It's quite an impressive thing. Now let's get this thing on the road and see what it's like to drive. And it just flies into life, doesn't it? That's the help of a new starter motor on there, that makes a big difference. Enormous wheel, I know you said it's a smaller wheel than we started with. It does feel a lot like a last wheel in your hand. That's what it is. It's more waves than torque, isn't it? The Traction Avant was originally given the code 7A, but the larger models became the 11A and included the Conduite Intérieure and Familiale models, but when the rear hatch was added it became known as the CV, or Commerciale. In Familiale guys, it had a third row of seats and could carry 9 people. On pre-war 11 CV models the rear hatch was in 2 parts, hinged top and bottom, but post-war the 11C Commerciale, as it was now called, had the one-piece tailgate we find on this car. Over the years and across the range there were 1.3, 1.5, 1.6 and, as here, 1.9 4-cylinder engines and a 2.9 litre 6-cylinder, the 1911cc rising from 46 to 57 horsepower over the years, with the engine fitted behind the front axle and the gearbox slung out in front in an aluminium transaxle, which was later repurposed by John Cooper for the first rear-engine Formula 1 cars. In 1951, The Motor magazine tested a 1911cc Light 15 and found it had a top speed of 72.6 mph and a 0 to 60 of 29.7 seconds. Although the initial acceleration is quite brisk, a lot of that time is spent at the higher ends. With the dash-mounted gear lever and umbrella handbrake, the front area is open and uncluttered, which helped make these popular with taxi drivers, among many other people. The car looked impossibly futuristic when it first appeared in the 1930s, but by the 50s it was looking dated and sales were slowing, so its fitting its replacement, the DS and the cheaper ID, were also impossibly futuristic as well, although the self-levering suspension had been trialled on the 6-cylinder cars and a version of the 1.9 litre engine was carried over to the new models. Now, it might have looked dated in the 1950s, but even by the 90s, Traction Avants were looking chic, retro and Art Deco cool, and that has not faded over the years. If you've enjoyed this, please do hit like and subscribe, and join me again next time.